Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to this week's edition of Living Lives. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Eric Polli, joining me. Eric and I, you've heard me talk about Easton Mountain a lot over the past couple months, and Eric and I met at Easton Mountain at a Bare Your Soul retreat. So he's an intuitive, and he does coaching and readings and a whole bunch of other things. So let me welcome him to the show today. Welcome, Eric, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, we had a fun time a couple weekends ago. We were up in Salem, Eric lives in Massachusetts, so we were up in Salem, walking around and looking at all the witches and stuff. So it was fun. So what do you want to talk about today, Eric?
Well, I was thinking about when you said, would you like to be on the show? And I said, yes. And then I thought, okay, what am I going to talk about? So it's interesting how life, life gives you the lessons you need. And I've just come out of a big lesson of learning how to really be present and learning how to let go. And that comes out of being present, I think. So for me, I was divorced 5 years ago, and my life sort of exploded on me. You have a thought of how your life's going to be, and it's going pretty well, and then all of a sudden, boom! It all explodes. So you spend a lot of time, at least I spent a lot of time reflecting on the past, thinking about the future. So that created some depression and some anxiety, which is a nice combination.
Okay, I'll take your word on that
one. Yeah. So I've really worked hard on learning how to be in the present and just being in this moment and not really looking backwards anymore. There's that great saying, you only look backwards to see how far you've come. But even that, I really am trying to leave the past where it needs to be, and not be so focused on the future. I've always balked against goal setting. It's always, for me, not been something anytime anyone, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I've never been able to answer that. And there's nothing wrong with it. I just haven't been able to. And I see why now, because I really, I think living in what's happening right now, for me, is a really calming place to be.
There's the saying about how, tomorrow is a mystery and yesterday is history, but today is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
Right. Exactly.
And if we don't unwrap that present, we really don't enjoy today. And then we look back at it and say, well, heck, why didn't I, do this or do that?
Exactly. And I'm not, believe me, I am not a pro at it, and I'm not a guru of staying present. I don't want to say it's a struggle, but it's a challenge some days to be present. I tend to go into the past instead of being in the future. So I really I work on just staying present. And that also leads to another thing, which is the letting go process. I was always under the impression that the letting go process was just like, okay, I'm just going to let go of it. It's going to be done. I'm not going to think about it anymore, but that does not work.
No.
That is kind of there was a poem that I used to have on my wall. It was called, it was originally She Just Let Go, but I changed it to He. But, there was no fanfare. There was this whole poem about it. He just let go. Not easier said than done. Yeah. But I do believe that staying really present with what is, the letting go just happens.
Okay.
Meditation, morning practice are two things that I use to really be present, to start the day off being present.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you meditate.
I do.
You do, right. So there's a real presence in meditation and clearing your head and just being silent and still.
Yes. I know a lot of people have trouble with it, and I always say just start with 2 minutes.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be an hour. Mine is usually somewhere between 10 and 20, minimum of 10. But and I use an app called Insight Timer, which is a great way and I've mentioned it before when we've talked about meditation. It's a free app that shows you who you're meditating with in all parts of the world, but it just sets a timer, and it's just it's a little Bosu bowl is the icon for it, but it's called Insight Timer, and it's free. And there's a paid version, but there's also guided meditations on it as well. If you have trouble sitting and just meditating yourself, and it's always, we have that monkey brain, and a lot of things are always coming in, and that's always going to be that way. But we just have to thank them for coming in and saying, "I'll deal with you later," and put them aside, and being present with, again, back to being present with what you're doing at the time, and just being open. And I always find if you ask a question before you go into the meditation, you a lot of times will get an answer if you just let it be.
I agree. I tend to set an intent. I don't really do it anymore, but at the very beginning, I used YouTube videos, and I just did guided meditations. Again, I did a 10-minute guided meditation or a 2-minute guided meditation, or I lasted 30 seconds and I forgave myself and just said, okay, that's over for today. And now I can sit. I tend to sit for like 10 minutes, but
Okay.
I do morning chanting, and so it's a little bit more involved, but the actual silence piece is generally 10 minutes. And that's really all I need. I mean, I think, but anyway, it starts me off in a present state.
Uh-huh.
Now, what happens during the day, I'm not always staying present.
That's a whole different issue. But I've found that the days that I've missed my meditation or didn't do my meditation first thing, if I picked up this device before I did my aside from using the Insight Timer app on it for the meditation, if I looked at Facebook, if I looked at something, then I find that my whole day, it tends to be more frantic and more trying to catch up with everything. Whereas if I just start with the meditation, just 10 minutes, it sets the tone for the whole day and allows me to be more present for everything that happens during the day.
It totally does. And on the days when I'll give you a good example. I sold my second home. So I had a big tax bill for capital gains. So I didn't know what the amount was. And then I got the amount, and automatically I went into my, rabbit hole spin. Oh my God, I'm going to be broke. I had the money, all of that. And I was really pleased because I said to myself, okay, stop. What do you need to do right now? And I just breathed. I sat in front of my altar and I just said, what do I need to do right now? And the answer I got was meditate. And I sat there for, I think it was probably 5 minutes. It wasn't even 5 minutes. And I just breathed and I just let it go. And I came into my office. I wrote the check. I put it in the envelope and I said, it's done. It's gone now. And I thought, wow. But that's the kind of presence that I've been able to get to more. Mm-hmm. Again, it doesn't always happen, and I'm not the expert, but it's taken quite a while, but it's, you have to just stick with it. Because if you're not somebody who's used to being present, you're somebody who's used to being in the future or used to being in the past. This is a whole gray area. I remember a therapist told me once, you live in the black or the white. You don't do well in gray. And she was completely right. The gray area created a lot of anxiety for me. And now I find I'm able to live in the gray, which I think the gray area is really the present.
Okay.
I mean, people say, oh, the gray area is kind of nondescript. I think the gray area is the area that where you're just able to take what comes and be with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've been helping my clients with too, is really that's why I hesitate to call. I mean, I am a coach, I'm a certified coach, but I hesitate to call myself a coach. I'm someone who's more a reminder to just be with what is showing up and then deciding what you want to do with it.
Okay. So what kind of client would come to work with somebody like you?
I found that clients who are making big changes in their life, either they're going through a divorce or I don't know if you find this too, but I find the clients that come to me are going through similar things that I'm going through.
Oh, okay.
And I almost feel like I'm being given this test so that I can come up with some things that work for me, so that I can then help other people with the things that have worked with me, to help them work with it themselves. It's been kind of a fun journey for me because of, people will talk and I'm thinking, okay, I just went through that.
They always, anybody in any of the development fields will always tell you, you can study and learn and do all this stuff, but the best way to really get it is to teach it. So by, once we learn something, helping someone else through it or teaching it to someone else is the best way to get it really in our heads. And it's interesting that you've been given clients who have the same kind of things that you have been through, so that you can share that knowledge and also help yourself finish the process.
Yeah, I do think that that's kind of our purpose as people who are healers or workers, or we go through it so that we can help other people go through it. I just think I've learned that it's a training ground.
Yeah. And I know that some of the people that I can help are people who are, either stuck in or really mired in corporate stress and things. Cause I went through that, for 28 years.
Yep.
And before I left, corporate life, and I have that background. I can speak to it and not just be someone who's never done it, so I can, and it also gives you more of a rapport with your client and me with mine, because we've lived and shared some of the same experiences. So that connection we can get deeper with, which then helps the healing process more.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it helps us to be open to and it also helps for us to learn to be present, because being present with your client is, not being 7 steps ahead of your client, but just being right where they are.
Yes.
And sitting with them right where they are and holding the space right where they are and being okay with that.
And listening to what they're saying right now and not trying to think what the answer to what they might say 5 minutes from now is.
Or how am I going to, I know when I started in coaching, that must be 8 years ago now, I had this, because I have a caretaker, I like to take care of people, but found that I was a little bit of a Mr. Fix-It.
Okay.
So they'd have a problem, and I'd think to myself, "Oh my God, how can I help them fix it?"
Yeah.
Instead of just, okay, you know what? They're going to know how to fix it themselves. I just need to be there with them.
And help them get to that point.
Yeah. But they do. I think if you're just, I know for me, if I'm with my clients and I just sit with them and hold the space and help them process, they get themselves there. I think it's just allowing, I almost think it's like a little bit of a conduit. I open the space for them to explore it.
And it's always, they always joke, you have two ears and one mouth. You should listen twice as much as you speak. But and I know it's hard for people, and myself included, to keep quiet sometimes. And it definitely, if you do, watching the magic unfold in front of you as people come to the realization from holding space can be very, very powerful, as but for anybody can do it, really, is just to really just listen and sit there. Like you said, you don't have to be a Mr. Fix-It.
Nope.
And I guess that's one of the things that they talk about in that Women and Men from Venus and Mars book. Women don't want you to tell them the answer. They just want you to listen to the problem. And I know men tend to be more of, oh, you can do this, but it really is something that just listening and let people work through themselves is much more powerful sometimes. If they ask for an answer, that's different. But just sitting there and holding space. And when I first got involved with this work years ago, and people talked about holding space, I'm like, what the heck are you talking about, holding space? You can't hold space. It's space. But it really is a very powerful tool for the work that we do, and for any healer, really. Even if you think a nurse in a hospital who just sits with a patient just to keep them company, that holding the space, or doctors or whatever, spending some time with, unfortunately these days it's less and less time, but with their patient, to really listen to what's going on in their lives, can really make a big difference.
Isn't that's considered bedside manner, right? Like their bedside manner it's really holding space. Either you can, or either you do or you don't. Even if you're there for 5 minutes, you can hold the space. Yeah. I think it's also led to a little bit of, for me, and even holding the space for myself has allowed me to deal with the trauma that has been in my life, instead of having to fight so much to try and heal it.
Okay.
Just kind of, okay, it's here. It's always going to be here. It's always going to be a trigger. Let me just see if I can coexist with it. And just like even hold the space for that.
Yeah.
And stay present with what shows up with that. I mean, if I have anxiety, I know it's from something in the past, but like, how can I just be with that anxiety, and what can I do? I know it's going to be there. What can I do to help myself, instead of, always trying to push and heal and, being so active? Be a little more passive, but in a good way, like being a little more passive and loving towards yourself.
And sometimes I've heard different therapists and things call it sitting in the fire, just sitting there, acknowledging what's happening, not trying to change it, not trying to mitigate it, not trying to diminish it, but just to sit and really, again, back to being present with what's going on, get a full appreciation of it. And then you can take that, intense time to feel that. And then, having acknowledged that, you can then step aside or step away from it a little bit, so that it's not as front and center in your life.
It's not as charged.
Right.
right? You can actually take the charge away.
You gave it its due, and you can.
Yeah.
That's a great way of moving forward with some stuff.
Yeah.
So what's a great way for people to get a hold of you if they're interested in talking to you?
Yeah, there's my website, which is universalembrace.com. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay.
I have some offerings on there and just a little bit more about what I do. And yeah, I would love to help more people. I do readings. I kind of do a mixture of readings and a lot of intuitive work. And my coaching is definitely not orthodox coaching. It's definitely I do what I feel people need.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm open to designing whatever it is that they need. Some people just need a reading.
Okay.
And some questions that come up for a reading for them to answer on their own. That's been pretty powerful too.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
This has been very insightful, talking about ways that we can be more present in what happens with ourselves and with our families and friends and with our lives. So if you want to hang out in the green room for a second, I'm just going to wrap up the show, and we can chat. So thanks for joining me today on this episode of Living Lives. And as always, I encourage you all to go out, make a connection, and live your best lives. And for more information about what's going on with Living Lives, upcoming guests and all, you can like my Facebook page or like my YouTube feed, wherever you happen to be finding this episode. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everybody.